So welcome, my name is Wendy Crane, and this talk today is about codependency and, or conquering codependency and building conscious connections with yourself and with others. So we're going to talk a little bit about building that healthy, conscious relationship with yourself and how to foster that in your relationships as well. So who here knows what codependency is? Ever heard of it? Okay.
Ever lived it?
What?
Ever lived it?
Ever lived it? Yeah, we kind of know what that is. I heard somebody mention Codependent No More from way back when. That was the first codependency book I ever read. I actually was given that in high school by a guidance counselor because I was in some crazy relationship. So that was the beginning of my journey of learning about this stuff. So we teach what we most need to learn, right? So we won't spend a ton of time there. I want to spend more time on how you're going to build the conscious relationships, but we're definitely going to talk more about that, or start at that foundation. But just to tell you a little bit about myself, I am a marriage and family therapist. I have a private practice in Lake Mary, Florida, so I've traveled here from there. I've been doing that a little over 20 years. My specialty is mostly with relationships, so that's just my passion. And also working with people in all stages of relationships, so maybe preparing for a relationship, coming out of a relationship, going through divorce, and just rebuilding your life. So for me, those kinds of things is what I get really excited about, and helping you have something that's healthy, and so a place where you can really thrive in relationship. And then on an individual level, what that means for you with a relationship with yourself. So many times the relationship with ourself is what really isn't that healthy. So, and then that's what attracts those unhealthy relationships. So we're gonna do a little bit of work with that today too. Okay, so we're gonna pass one more thing around because I just like giving things away. So I want you each to take a heart and just pass it around the room. And when you get this heart, I want you to think about an intention for today and kind of what it is that you were looking to get out of today. And then we're going to have some time at the end to talk, and I'll answer questions, and we can kind of get a little bit more into what you're looking, how to personalize this for you. So let's talk about where codependency begins and kind of what it is. Even though we've all, heard about it, we may, have a sense of what that means for you. But the way I look at it is that codependency is basically an unconscious relationship. I gotta make sure the stage green, so and basically, there's a book called Conscious Loving by Gay and Kathleen Hendricks. Has anybody ever read that? No? Okay. I hadn't read it in all my years, and when I finally discovered it, I thought, where has this been all my life? But they have a really good description of codependency, and they talk about it, this is in your handout, that basically in all relationships, new relationships, we go through a honeymoon period, right? Where you think this person is amazing and wonderful, and you want to spend all your time together and keep, getting to know each other, and everything is great, and everybody's on their best behavior for at least those first couple of months. And you just think this is like, going to be the best thing ever, especially if you tend to lean in more of a codependent tendency. You're going to really get close to this person because that's part of what you want to do. So typically after that honeymoon period, then those not so pretty parts of yourself begin to emerge, like all of our imperfections and just our humanness, right? And maybe our dysfunctions and all of the unconscious patterns and things that we live with that we're not always aware of start to show up. The place where codependency begins is when those things show up, and instead of talking through it or being honest or checking in with your partner or revealing something more vulnerable withdraw, you hide, or you project that onto your partner. Like, you don't own it at all. Instead, it's their problem. So, and you might withdraw too. Like, maybe that's the time where you've had all this time with somebody, and all of a sudden, they don't call for a couple days. Or you don't want to do anything. You're just like, no, I just don't, I think maybe I just need some space. And then, nobody talks about it. And you keep trying to get back together, and the relationship goes on, it just goes underground. And then you're just trying to keep that front of that honeymoon period, or who you showed up with in the beginning, who you showed up as in the beginning, and continue that on. Well, that doesn't really work, as most of us probably know if we've tried that before. But that's where codependency begins. So in other words, you're now operating out of your unconscious coping patterns of, this is what I do. I just hide this part of myself. I please, I give you what it is that you want. I sacrifice my boundaries. I do things that I don't really want to do. I say it's okay when it isn't. But secretly I'm mad, or I feel abandoned, or I feel scared, or I feel any feeling that is vulnerable and I don't want to tell you about it. So and then eventually that relationship is going to disintegrate, or something isn't going to feel right over time, which is, and then you might end the relationship and then start it again, but without having the awareness of what you're doing, you're going to wonder why these things never work out, right? Or our clients are going to do that too. So I'm not going to assume all of us are codependent. Maybe we've done some work on ourselves, hopefully, right? We may have familiarity with it. But when we're helping our clients, and this is really where hypnotherapy comes in, is the beliefs that we created about ourselves originally, that were false most likely, and the coping mechanisms that we created to deal with relationships and survive maybe what it is we went through as kids, are what we need to uncover and make conscious in order to make the change in the relationship. So hypnotherapy is great if someone really has no awareness of what it is that's going on for them. They just know they're in these patterns and these relationships, and they're unhappy and it doesn't work, and they're not getting what they want or what they need. So when we can help them uncover that through hypnosis, through hypnotherapy, then we have something to work with. And that's what we can then bring forward into, okay, how is it that I'm gonna live from this truth of myself, which is what I've been hearing in all of the talks we've been through so far, is that what you do in hypnosis and hypnotherapy is you uncover your true self, and you start living a more authentic life, and you can tell the truth, and you can be who you need to be, who you wanna be, who you know you truly are. And if you can do that in a relationship, then that's the secret to that fulfillment in a relationship, where you get to be your whole self and be in a relationship, and you don't have to sacrifice any part of that. And when clients can learn that, it gives them all kinds of possibilities of what it is they can do with their life. So, and this is not just romantic relationships, it's in any relationship. It's lovely if we can do it with our family of origin. Sometimes it's hard, I'll say to clients, to go back up the line. It's easier to maybe decide you're gonna do something different with your kids, you're gonna teach them something different, you're gonna model healthy relationships with them. Sometimes our parents and our family are available to do some of that healing work with us, but oftentimes they're not. They tend to project that stuff down if they're not willing to do their conscious healing work. And then we have to do the work going forward down the generations. So that's really what I want to talk about today, is how are we going to build the conscious relationship. So if we can leave behind the codependency piece. And so the beginning of that is the relationship with yourself. How are you talking to yourself? How much do you lie to yourself? How much, when do you betray or abandon yourself? And the most simple way I can come up with to address that is by just looking at yes and no? Do you have a clear yes and a clear no? Or do you tend to say yes when you want to say no? Do you say no when you want to say yes? Every time we do the opposite of what is true for us, we're betraying ourselves. And that's setting us back up into that codependent space. So, okay, does everybody have their hearts? Their little hearts? Okay. So I want you to just get it out and put it in your hands. Just sort of, just kind of feel it there. Anybody not get a heart?
The white one. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, so I want you to just close your eyes for a minute and just kind of sitting with this heart and the energy of this heart, and just imagine it as a representation of your own heart and a real true place in yourself. And I want you to just bring up a time when maybe you said yes when you wanted to say no. Or you may have said no when you wanted to say yes. Maybe there was something you really wanted or you wanted to receive and somebody was willing to give it to you and you refused it because you didn't feel you deserved it, or whatever may have been blocking you there. Or you may be somebody that says yes all the time, never says no, and constantly feels overextended and, tired and exhausted by things. So just bring up that time, something you can connect to. And then I want you to connect with your heart, the heart in your hand and your heart inside. And just let yourself make a promise to yourself that you're not going to do that anymore. That you're going to give yourself permission to tell the truth all the time. And feel what that truth feels like inside your heart. So I want you to, set this other place aside where you've kind of done the self-betrayal, and then I want you to bring up another time where you honored your yes or your no. You said yes to something, even though you were scared, but you were so excited about it, and you just went for it. You gave it to yourself. Or the person that is always asking you to do things, or feels like they need you all the time, or they can't do it without you, or if you don't do this, then you don't really love me. But internally, there's a part of you that's like, I could do it, but I really don't want to do it. I just want to take care of myself. And so you say no. Bring up a time when you were able to do that. So a clear yes or a clear no. And then feel what that feels like in your heart. To fully honor yourself. To tell the truth. And so just allow that new feeling of telling the truth, honoring what it is that you truly want, what that feels like in your heart. Allow that to just replace the other experience and reinforce the promise that you want to make to yourself to tell the truth all the time, knowing that you deserve to honor your authentic needs and wants and desires. And just allow all of that new energy, that connection to yourself, to be infused in this heart that you're holding in your hands. And allow this little heart to be a reminder for you as you go forth from today of coming back to your truth coming back to your authentic self. Knowing that you gave that to yourself by coming here today, thinking that maybe you needed to hear that message, and also that this is something you can take forth and teach your clients to give them the gift of their own truth. Okay, so open your eyes, take a deep breath in, let it out. Yeah, just take a look at your little heart in your hand. And just know this is something that you can remember going forward. And even something that you can share with your clients. So, does anybody want to share maybe what came up for them about what they had used to do in the past, or a time when they did honor their truth? What came up as you were going through that little exercise?
Let me first start by saying when I chose this white heart, the pure white heart, and I held it in my hand and it represented my heart, and the first thing I felt was cold. The heart was cold, and I said, well, maybe there's a part of my heart that can be a little cold sometimes, and I need to warm it up and be open. And to your last question, you know, I finally stood up for something that I did not want to do, and to have my me time, my me space, and let my husband go off and do it with his friends.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, and then I started feeling the guilt of maybe I should have went, because there's other couples going, and God, he's gonna be alone, and I guess I should go. But I'm like, no, I'm standing in my truth and the fact that I needed some me time.
Yes.
So that was what came up for me and what came up for the heart. So
Awesome. Very nice. Thank you for sharing. That is so great, because that's another piece of what we'll speak to later, which is the balance of separateness and togetherness in a relationship. And oftentimes when we want to take that separate space, we feel guilty. Like, well, I mean, we are a couple, and like everybody's going as a couple, and then if I don't want to go, and then is that, it's not going to look good, and everybody's going to miss me, whatever, But if you went, what do you think would have happened?
I would have had a good time.
Oh.
I would have I would have decided.
That wasn't the answer I was looking for. No,
But so I did it for my husband because I know that he would want me to be. So I decided that I would make a good time of it. Although I really would have wanted my own space. So
Yes.
I can't sit in anger or disappointment. It's like I'm with people I like, so just go with it, Deb.
Well, and that is so interesting, because I think we get used to that, right? Especially in our culture too. It's like, and that's why I said earlier, I could do it, but do I want to do it?
Right.
And sometimes, yeah, we have to do things we don't want to do. And so we've made compromises in relationships, and obviously those things happen at times. But it's when we make it okay repetitively, right? To be like, well, I mean, I could go, and I like the people, and it's gonna be fun. I'll have a
It's
good
a
time.
choice.
I mean, it's okay, right? But over time, if we do that over and over again, resentment builds, right? And then that deteriorates relationships really fast. And over time, if we're not talking about it, especially, we're not talking about it as that comes up, then that becomes one of those four horsemen in the end, of that contempt and criticism that John Gottman talks about. Are you guys familiar with the four horsemen of criticism, contempt, stonewalling, and defensiveness, I think is the other one. So those tend to sort of be in the underground. So good for you for doing that and for having that awareness, And it is sort of a risk in relationships, but I think what that allows is maturity to develop in a relationship. That you can do your thing, and I can do my thing, and we're okay, and we're still close, and we have all kinds of intimacy, and how much respect do we build for our partners when we allow them to thrive in where they need to be, whatever that looks like. And we can develop more gratitude also of, you know what, I really appreciate you. I've had some space from you, and you've made space for me, and I've made space for you. It can go both ways, right? So that's a huge piece. So thank you for sharing that. Anybody else have anything they want to share from their experience?
Sure, I'm working on it with my sister.
Yeah.
We talked about it a little bit earlier. And what came up for me is because she has a family and I don't. So the expectation is, well, it's just you. You can do whatever you want.
Exactly, yeah.
So like, I always have to go to her. It's always her schedule, like, because she has 2 little ones.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's easy for you to just come over here than it is for me to back up the kids, which makes sense, but then, yeah, I'm always giving.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to learn that boundary.
Yeah. What comes up for you when you start to talk about that?
I feel taken advantage of.
Yeah. What feeling goes with that?
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, what feeling goes with that? Taking advantage of isn't a feeling.
I need to value myself more, just do what I need to do.
Yeah.
And let her deal with her own shit, and not pour it out to me.
That's true. Right.
So,
Yeah. So when you speak like that, when you say, I just need to let her take care of her own shit and not, what do you feel in your body?
I still feel tense, but we have a trip coming up next weekend that I so want to bail on, but I don't think I can do it last minute. I
Okay.
think that would create World War III.
Okay.
So I think I might.
Maybe you're not quite ready for that. Okay.
So I think I might have to just suck that one up and going forward, just make sure that I put the lines there.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe use some time in the card going to start setting those boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sometimes when we have the awareness, we can't always jive right in. You know, our other relationships may or may not be quite ready for that, which is not our problem necessarily, but, you know, we love people, we love our family, so, and especially with our family of origin, like I was saying, that's where it's the most complex, typically. But, yeah, that you have that awareness now, so you can look ahead and say, you know what, maybe I'm not gonna agree right away, or I'm gonna take my time to really think about what I'm gonna put myself into.
Yeah.
But I just want you
I
to
said
notice.
yes out of guilt, but I said yes 3 weeks ago, like I can't, the week before be like, I changed my mind.
I mean, you could,
I could, but.
you know, you wanna weigh that out, right? But I want you to notice just the little shift internally when you gave yourself permission to say, you know what, I just need her to deal with her stuff, and I need to do my thing. What did you feel in your body underneath the guilt that came pretty quickly?
A little bit lighter, the volcano stopped.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of what stepping into your power feels like. And there's truth in that, right? Like, in other words, that's pretty inarguable. That's another term we can use in the relationship aspect, is our experience that's true is inarguable. And typically in our relationships, we want to build the ability to share the inarguable truth, right? So arguable truth is, you're making me come on this vacation, and you always do this, and you always make it so I can't, say no, and I always need to come to you, and you're always doing that, right? What is she gonna do with that?
Just find things that I did.
Argue with you, right? She's gonna be like, no, I don't, I can do that, you can do whatever you want, even though that's not true, but when you say, I really need time for me, and this doesn't really, I really think this isn't gonna work for me. Like, I feel like this time I'm gonna take a time out, and I understand if you're upset, but you know what, this is just what I need for me. That's hard to argue with, even though they still might find a way to do that depending on the complexity of the relationship, right? But I think that's a really big piece. And so But what it feels like inside is what I want you to sort of register. Like there is truth in that, and there's power in that. And the more we practice, the better we get, right? And the stronger we get.
I was thinking, thank you for sharing that. I know it's really a difficult situation. But I remember trying to speak my truth and set a boundary with the commitment I had made. You know, and it was like a pretty big commitment for at least a year, if not the expectation I would do it for 2 years, volunteer. And I felt like it was the right time when I said yes to it. But as I got into it, the commitment, I was like overwhelmed. And I was really like, I'm like overwhelmed, and I'm like stressed, and now I'm not real pleasant when I have to go to these meetings, and you know, that's coming out because I'm sort of being passive aggressive because I'm just so frustrated.
Right.
And I felt like I wasn't being heard. But what was difficult was when I did speak up, there was one particular person that was like, not like you were talking about, inarguable, that how you feel, that someone should not be going, well, you shouldn't feel that way, right? But this person was like, oh, you know, this is all about you. This isn't about any of us, this is all about you. And I was like, to come up against a person like that was really hard. But I did, and I kind of got very emotional at times, but I finally just said, no, I can't do this anymore, I have to step down. So I mean, it felt like really honoring myself. It was very hard because I had one particular person saying, you know, like basically you're being selfish, and because you're not always going to get a pleasant response.
That's
like,
exactly right.
You're inarguable. You know,
Yeah.
Well, that's what it is.
That's what we hope
How
for.
about you?
Good for you.
How could it possibly have gone?
right?
Well, good, yeah, good.
What a
for you.
relief, right? I mean,
And, you know, that is the hard part, is sometimes you end up looking like the bad guy.
yeah. I felt really like the bad guy.
Well, and especially those of us who are sort of helping people, right? We're helpers. We like people to feel good, right? We want to help. We want to be of service. We want to make sure everybody feels good, you know? And so that goes against all of that. But the key is that you have to still feel good too. Like, or you will not have anything left. And then what are you doing? So that's like what you were saying. You got so overwhelmed. It was so draining, which you got with the response that you got from the group probably helps you know why it was so draining.
Right.
Right? Because they're just, you know. And so good for you for recognizing that. But yeah, that is a really tough decision. And when somebody is projecting onto you, right? Because that's that projection. This has nothing to do with me. This is your problem.
Right. You need to work on you. Is what
Yeah.
I was getting. I was like, oh,
Right.
I must be a horrible person, right? I must be
And I think for more sensitive souls, right? We're easily going to take that in and be like, oh my God, okay, well, I've done something wrong then. Like maybe I need to go back and figure out why I'm not feeling good anymore. So we doubt ourselves, right? Or we'll start questioning ourselves. And that's a huge piece where how can we strengthen that of like, no, this is my truth.
That's it.
This is what I need.
That's what came up. You spoke your truth, and not a lot of people can do that. And maybe that person was feeling that way, but couldn't speak her truth. And so how dare you?
Exactly, right?
Something she said, I just want to build upon because I think it's really important. When you said you were questioning whether you were being selfish, I ask people, what's the opposite of selfish? And you're going to get selfless. So think about that word, selfless. If we're working in servitude instead of in service with people, then we're being selfless. And that is a complete absence of ourself. And so what your program is reinforcing is like we need to come back to that self. So the same thing with you were saying. It's just I've done a shit ton of work on codependency, and I can clearly say, 99.9% of the time I don't go there anymore. But
Yeah.
you learn to catch it quicker. So just the way I catch it quicker is like, I need to be. Am I being selfless here? Then I need to come back to myself. So I just thought I would add that because
Love
these
it.
stories are all things that I've dealt with.
Yep.
So, if
Yeah,
that's
me
helpful.
too. Yeah, thank you for that. That's really important because, and I'll say one thing before I go to you, that something I say to my clients a lot is self-care is not selfish, it's responsible. Because if you aren't taking care of yourself, what are you gonna be able to give? And it's irresponsible of us, honestly, because we are responsible for us. And if we're not taking care of ourselves and filling our own cup and doing what we need to do to take care of it, how are we gonna give anything, right? You can't give from an empty cup.
Sometimes I have this voice in my head that just gets a little rough. And if someone had said to me, this is all about you, I would look at them and say, exactly, that's why I'm bringing it up. I'm having difficulty with this commitment.
Yeah.
And so, there's this little part of me that always says, you know, people are gonna look at you and say you're aggressive. And that fear of being perceived as aggressive. I once had a boss say, we were applying for a grant, and I asked a question, and my boss just looked at this man and said, Joseph here is from New York, excuse him. And I'm not from New York. But you know, so, I mean, when she said that, when you said that, I thought, how dare this person say that? And I would have probably ended up escalating that a bit too much. So, I don't know where the happy medium is, but.
Well, I think it's sort of about holding on to yourself, right? So the opposite of codependency, honestly, is differentiation. So let's just go to our little handout here, because I'm going to show you something. And this is like a little picture. I had a lot of fun on Canva with this, by the way. So I want to make sure I show it to you. But it kind of speaks to what you're talking about. So the top picture is my version of what I would call a codependent relationship. And the bottom picture is more of the conscious relationship. So just to finish what we were just talking about, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it, is differentiation is two whole people who can become very close without losing themselves. So being able to hold on to yourself in the presence of another, regardless of their dysfunction or health or whatever it is we want to say, is the whole point. So so that helps us with our reactivity, right? So when somebody comes at us with all their stuff and just dumps it on us, right, which is what that person did to you, because honestly, they're having that problem. They probably don't want to be there. But because you spoke up, well, then that means they have to deal with themselves, which they're not going to, so instead it's gonna be your problem. So, but when we can recognize that is their stuff, like that is not true for me, so that means there's a projection going on here. And if I can hold on to myself, then I don't even have to react, like it's not even my thing. I'm just gonna be me. That takes practice. That's not easy because it's easy to react to when somebody comes at you like that. But what I'll say to people in intimate relationships, especially reactive relationships, is to get that practice in of, okay, when somebody is giving me something that's hard to hear, or it's maybe aggressive, or it feels like an attack, I can take it in and just see, does any of that feel true? Like, is there feedback in there for me of something that maybe I need to grow in myself? Because sometimes we hear things that are hard to hear, that we're like, I don't like that, but you know, if I really sit with it, yeah, that is something I do. And I probably could work on that as like a rough edge that I have that I probably need to grow. But oftentimes what's coming at me has nothing to do with me. And so if I can filter that in and recognize, okay, that really is not mine, then I can give that back to whoever's sending it to me. And just hold on to myself and say, you know what, that's just not true for me, that's not my thing. My husband and I will have, so this is my second husband, my forever husband. The first one came out of a very codependent contract, so it obviously didn't last forever. So with my current husband, we do a lot of this work, and actually it's been really fun and it's helped inform my practice. And so we have experiences like that, where he is having a problem with something, with me, apparently, and it starts off, and he tries, he'll say, I'm just gonna fumble through this, I don't know how to say it right, so just go with it. I'm like, okay, let me hear it, you know, and he'll say whatever the problem is, and I'm like, okay, and so, but I'm like, I don't think that's mine, you know, like, I don't think that's mine. He doesn't always like that answer at first, but we keep talking, and eventually we get to a place where he'll say, yeah, you know what, that is my thing, that's my thing, I know I do that. Like, it's I can't think of a clear example right now, but eventually it dissipates where he owns his part, and I can definitely I can see how I contributed to that. Like, I can see how I maybe I was in a bad mood, and so I said something, and then he, you know, reacted to it or whatever. But what he was accusing me of in the beginning wasn't really mine. That was kind of what he was feeling. So having that sense of wholeness is really the biggest foundation of the conscious connection. So if we look at these, so let's just look at these for a minute. I know I'm probably jumping all around on the first page, but I'm gonna cover all this stuff. It's just not gonna go in order. And am I doing okay on time? How much am I got? 20 minutes?
About 15.
15 minutes? Okay. All right, so we'll kind of do this real quick. So the questions in the middle, I wanted you to just sort of contemplate in looking at both pictures. So I'm gonna just throw out the question, you guys can answer it for me. So in the top picture, can you tell where one person ends and the other begins? The people are the circles, by the way, if it's not clear. Can you tell? Sort of? Okay. Are they close?
Way too close.
Way too close, right? Like, I mean.
Way too close for this emotional person.
All right. And so their intimate connection, I look at this little heart as like the connection between the two of them. So when I'm working with a couple, what this represents for me is, so you have the two people, and then the relationship is sort of around them, and the connection that they share is between them. So when I'm doing couples work, typically I'm working with what's between them, right? That's this connection where all these dynamics show up, but when you have this codependent relationship, they're so enmeshed, right? Like they don't know where they end and the other person begins. And so that's where I came up with, I'm just gonna overlap the circles, right? Because it's hard to know where people end and begin. And the intimate connection is like somewhere in the relationship. It's not clear, you know, it's usually infiltrated with all kinds of other things that they struggle with. And the relationship is the square around the outside. And as you can see, it's pretty solid. And so, are there clear boundaries between these two people? And is there room for the relationship to expand? With this solid black line around them, it's not expandable. And so typically what happens in codependent relationships, because honestly, the purpose of a relationship is to help you grow. Now, that's not what we're socialized to believe, right? We're socialized to believe that a relationship is supposed to do what?
Complete me.
Complete you, make you happy, right? I have so many people, so many partners, and they're like, I just want to make her happy. That's why I married her. I just want to make her happy. I'm like, well, that is not possible. So We gotta find a new purpose, right? Because you can't make somebody happy. We can make ourselves happy, right? And happiness is like this fleeting thing. It's not even a solid state. Joy is a solid state, right? But happiness is like a fleeting, comes and goes. So, eventually a codependent relationship is gonna feel like a shirt that does not fit. Like you're gonna be suffocated in here, right? Or somebody's gonna try to jump out, they'll have an affair, they'll withdraw, they'll go hide in their man cave, for hours and hours, play golf, whatever. Women will go out with their friends. So there's not any room to grow here, not any room to expand. And oftentimes what I'm doing with couples is I'm saying, okay, we need to challenge the relationship to see if it can expand to incorporate two whole people. Because right now, this is not working, right? Like this is not healthy. So if we look down at the bottom picture and we ask the same questions, can you tell where one person ends and the other begins? Pretty clear, right? Are they close? Are these circles close together? Yeah. Where is their intimate connection? Pretty clear, right in the middle. And can you tell who is responsible for what? Oh, that was a question I didn't ask in the first one, but each person is 100% responsible. I'll talk about that in a second. Are there clear boundaries? Yes, they each live in their circle, right? So like this is my circle, this is your circle. And is there room for expansion? So I made the dotted line because that's something that you can continue to grow and expand. Because I recently heard that it was, I forget the woman I was listening to, relationship person, said that in our lifetime, we tend to go through 2 to 3 marriages. Now, some people can do that with one person. Sometimes you need different marriages, you need different partners, right? Like I did, because my first husband wasn't gonna come with me on my growth journey, so I said, okay, well then I think I'm gonna be done now. So, because you evolve through life, right? I mean, we're not the same people we were at 20. I hope not. At 30, at 40, 50, 60. So your relationship needs to expand and grow too, to incorporate you as your whole self. And that's what oftentimes will destroy relationships, is that you can't be your authentic self. Your partner is saying things like, don't feel that way. Do you really want to go do this training? I mean, oh my God, like, don't you have enough credentials already? Like, why do you gotta keep going away to these conferences, They want to keep homeostasis in the relationship, right? That's really what a system is always trying to do, is keep it the same. But we have to be willing to know this is the purpose of the relationship, is to keep growing and to keep expanding. So what I want couples that I work with to do is challenge the relationship to tolerate 2 whole people. And the way you do that is to start telling the truth. Start sharing what it is you really like. Who are you anyway? Who have you become? Which oftentimes we have to go back to the beginning and say, do you know yourself, right? So the last thing I'll mention is this responsibility piece, and this kind of came up in the card that you threw this morning, but I'll do it in the context of the relationships, which is, in a relationship, there is 200% responsibility. Each person has 100% responsibility for themselves. And so when each person is 100% responsible for themselves, then there's 200% responsibility in the relationship. But oftentimes what happens is one partner has 175% of the responsibility of some part of the relationship, and the other one has 25%. That might be in the emotional context of the relationship. That might be financial. So it's not always 50-50, right? It's not, but when we're taking responsibility for our partner, especially in something that they can do for themselves, we're not allowing them to be whole. And then they're not allowing themselves to be whole, right? So depending on where we are in that equation. A lot of times in the work that I do, it's about redistributing that responsibility back. So sometimes partners have to pull back and say, oh, like that's not mine. I don't need to take care of that. I need to let my partner do that for themselves because I'm hindering their growth by taking it from them. And some partners are gonna have to step up and be like, oh, I guess I need to show up there. You know, I need to check in with this space. We need to talk more. I need to be more vulnerable. I need to check in with the kids, or you know, whatever it might be. So that piece is what brings the relationship into two whole partners who have boundaries, speak their truth, and both can live as whole beings. And in an intimate partnership, that creates so much room for intimacy to grow. You can become so close when you can hold on to yourself. When you're not holding on to yourself and you're surrendering your power to your partner, or you're not speaking up for what you need or whatever it is, then you've lost your power. You know, you can't, you're not gonna have the healthy peace that you were seeking in the first place. So, I lost my train of thought right at the end there. So anyway, any questions about any of the stuff that we've been talking about? Yes.
So did you find that, you know, after COVID had lifted, that your business went up because, you know, we stayed in such close proximity to our partners that it's like, okay, honey, we gotta talk about this. You need to get out of the house and go find some friends. Hang out with them because I know I need that.
Well, I had a lot of couples that was kind of part of their contract pre-COVID, was that one would stay very busy, you know, and had, a lot of times it was women, they had their own life with their friends and volunteering or whatever it is that kept them busy, and especially if their husbands were retired.
Mm-hmm.
And he would be home or do stuff with his friends and play golf and whatever, right? And so with COVID, yeah, it was quite constraining to the relationship, and it required a lot of things to be dealt with or not. And so by the end of COVID, it was like, yeah, a lot of couples were on the verge of divorce. A lot of couples who've been married for many, many decades were not sure if they could maintain their relationship. So with some, we could talk through that and find a new way to be, but obviously you need your own space, right? That's what we were talking about in the beginning, of that balance, and COVID definitely threw that off balance, right? Way too much togetherness. And unless you could find it in your own home, which was hard, you know, at the time, so. Any other questions?
How do we apply this to like a hypnosis practice to help our clients?
So what I started.
That's a big question.
No, that's okay. So what I started with in the beginning was, what this will do is, it really provides a context to carry into what you work with your clients, so that you know this is maybe part of the background of what's going on. But honestly, what we would use hypnosis for, hypnotherapy, is to identify the beliefs that drive these behaviors. And then once we can bring those beliefs into consciousness, then clients have a choice of how they want to behave. And so if they were working with a couples therapist, in addition to maybe working with you, that's something they could bring back to the couples work. Or if you all work with couples, then that's something that you would be able to get them talking about more clearly. But honestly, it's more about the internal work that hypnosis is going to be working on. So like, what is it that drives my people pleasing? What is it that drives my self-betrayal, where I say yes when I want to say no? What's going on with that? And then how can I bring that into my awareness so I can make a new choice. And then practice things like, I'm gonna speak my truth. So in the hypnosis session, you can practice that, like test that out. Like, what does that feel like? Like I would do that with you if we were doing a session and you discovered that piece inside of you, we would be then acting that out on some level for you to really anchor what that being in your power feels like. So I think it's just more of that context of like, this is kind of what my clients are maybe dealing with, and then how can I help them contribute to having a more healthy relationship. 4 minutes, okay.
I have something to add to that. So I have in my office the hypnosis chair and a sofa, right? And people come in the first session and they look at the sofa and they think that I'm like a marriage therapist, right?
Uh-huh.
They can kind of come in there and argue with their spouses in my office if I can just get an appointment. And I said, oh, no, I don't do that. I work with individuals. See, like the two of you are like at these different spots, right? And then, but eventually you both grow to this point where then you can have a great relationship together and share, right? But it helps with marketing to understand that, to show them how they're building themselves up as individuals.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I've never had two people on the couch.
It's so funny because that's the way my office works. I have a couch, right? So like that's part of what we do. Because I really do a lot of therapy too. Hypnotherapy for me is an adjunct to the talk therapy that I do. So when I work with a couple, oftentimes if we get stuck somewhere, like in other words, we're dealing with this unhealthy dynamic, they have no idea where this is coming from, then I will do an individual session with one or both, whoever wants to do the work, get more information, and then we bring that back to the couple's work.
If you want to get real playful with it, I don't work with couples either, but I do work with people individually that are couples.
Yeah.
And I suggest to them, if they're open to it, we bring them in, especially if they're highly hypnotizable as far as super suggestible, because they're suggestible to each other, right? That's why they're getting
For
triggered.
sure.
And then I have them swap. I have one go into the mind and body of the other and see what it's like. And then we usually have a list of questions or things that they want to discuss ahead of time. And so then I will use a finger anchor so that if I'm talking to the husband, I'm touching the wife's leg so that when I say the name so that she can identify physically as him and vice versa. It's really astounding to see when they come out like, wow, I can feel what that was like for you, or I can see what that was like for you. But I'll never forget, I did this one time and the guy comes out and I said, and so what are your reflections about this? And he's like, boobs are fun. Oh no, it's the worst thing you can say. But if you're inclined to do that, I encourage you to try it because you might have already done something like that. I don't know, but it's really, you get some great information.
It's a creative way to use your hypnosis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you can say, okay, well, how else can we apply this to the relationship aspect of it, right? Like the relationship is where we grow. That's like an incubator for our growth. So if you can add your hypnosis into the relationship dynamics, not just talking about them, I mean, there's like endless possibilities there.
Building up self-love in hypnosis is like the fastest way to get through codependency.
Yes, absolutely.
Self-love. And most people, if you ask them, you say, how are you feeling about yourself? I don't like myself at all. And then when I say that's the thing to work on, that it's not this other person.
Oh, exactly. Well, because what we do is project
Right.
onto the other person, either that it's their problem. Usually people come to couples there because they want me to fix their spouse. That's because they're the problem, right?
That's the best.
Clearly not, so anyway, that's always who I know who to start with. Okay, any other questions? Are we done? I think I'm done. I think I've finished. Thank you.